All right, here we go. Welcome back, everyone, to episode 92. You're good. Hey, we just go off the cuff for these intros now, Tyler. We're back filming on another Sunday. Tyler, I hate this shit. No more Sunday filming. We're not doing this anymore.
We gotta get it done.
Ran into another hiccup, and this one was my fault. My Thursday, we were planning on filming Thursday, and my Thursday just got into an absolute swamp mess of having to get shit done and deadlines. And that stuff matters more than this podcast, but we do what is required, Tyler. Episode 92, still coming out at the same time. Here we are.
Yep. We do prioritize this. It's just not on the top of the priority list.
Exactly. It's on the list that it will get done, but it might be the last thing that gets done.
Unfortunately, especially for me, because this is like right before my bedtime and I got like 4 hours of sleep last night. So we're just going to grind through this. It would be great. Like, I feel like this is the time when like quote unquote entrepreneurs would like take coffee or drink coffee, have a Red Bull or whatever it is. And it's like grind through it and wake up. But you know what? We're all natural here afternoon.
Got to get through an hour. I think you can do that. Before we actually get into this week's updates and topic, I just want to say, if you guys are listening, we really appreciate you listening. If you could leave us a like, leave us a rating, whatever platform you're on, show us some love. We'd really appreciate that. We don't ask for much. We just want to share what we know entrepreneurship-wise, and hopefully it can help you on your journey as well. So feel free to do that. And if you don't want to do that, then we don't care either. Just hopefully you enjoy the show. So Tyler, diving right into it. Hopefully, exactly. If you don't enjoy the show, you're probably not even hearing this far. So, Tyler, what do you got updates in the last week since we filmed?
Yeah, so one of my old clients that I built a website for, he ended up reaching out to me and said, hey, my brother, I believe, I don't know, I sent it to you, maybe you know. He said he's got his foundation as well, and he's looking for a new website. So little referral type of action, I guess you could say there. And I'll be meeting with him on Thursday and going over that, seeing exactly what they want. But it looks like it's going to be very similar to what I did with the previous client, making him a new website, getting it all done. And from what he said, it seems like he doesn't want to do any of the online stuff, kind of like what the first client did. So we'll see what goes on there. We'll maybe update you. It's going to be after if we film on Thursday. So won't have an update then, but maybe in 2 weeks I'll be working on the website and we'll go from there. But yeah, he reached out to me, so that was kind of exciting.
That was exciting getting new clients, eh?
It is. And it's like, I didn't really have to, I mean, I've already paid the dues to acquire, I guess you could say, this new customer, because the first client that I had, it ended up going really well. He liked me, so I paid the dues there, but I didn't really have to do anything for this new acquisition, I guess you could say.
The power of referrals is super important. I think a lot of people undervalue that. One thing I'm noticing that when you brought that up, websites must be pretty heavy in referrals, because a lot of the clients that you've got, you'll send me a text and say so-and-so reached out, or so-and-so said they have this person that needs help. And I do the same thing. Whenever anybody asks me for a website, I always push them to the same guy. Whereas I feel like video services, and maybe I'm not getting referrals because our shit sucks, but video services, I feel like people do a lot more of their own research, where they're going on websites and they are seeing where they can get these video services from. Whereas websites, maybe people lean more so towards who other people have had success with. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say it does stem a little bit, because he has had quite a bit of hiccups with his previous people that have worked on his websites, and he's just like, I'm so fed up with it. I just want, and he would always call it a webmaster. And I'm like, I definitely ain't no webmaster. Yeah, I'm like, I ain't no webmaster, trust me. So he's like, I think, yeah, right. So he's had a lot of bad experiences with previous website designers, builders, whatever it might be. So I think being by myself, I think you're able to deliver a good experience for him, and like you're there, you're able to reply whenever he needs it, you're able to get everything done. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic compared to maybe if you're actually going through a team or a business. So I guess that's a little bit of what happened with him and why it worked so well with me, because he had, I think it was like 2 or 3 other people that he had bad experiences with.
Sometimes having those smaller organizations can probably benefit you because
Yeah.
it's probably
Yep.
easier building a website with one guy where you get to work with him. This is exactly what I want. He can ask you any
Yep.
questions. Where if you're working with a team that specifically makes websites for that niche or something like that, you might be dealing with a whole team, three, four, five people, and then it's like, who am I communicating with? And it gets all mumbo jumbo. But yeah, I do kind of like that small organization. Have I told you about the book Company of One?
Nah, I don't think so.
It's a book I read a few years ago and basically just talks about the power of staying as a company of one, of just one person and you're operating it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for everybody, obviously, but pretty much talks about, not everybody wants to build a $10 million business. Not everybody wants to have a
Right.
team of 15 people. If you can make a
Right.
living just doing it yourself and having the freedom, that there's success in that too.
Two things on this topic. My last meeting with my client, he mentioned how he was talking maybe a little bit of a competitive advantage over his other competitors where they have a bigger company, they have multiple people, and whenever someone comes in and is looking for rental equipment, they have to go through this person and then maybe they have to go to the higher up and then maybe they have to go to that person, and each time they're saying the exact same thing to each person. It's like, I've already said this to this person. It's like, and they're handing it off, whereas with him, he's by himself, so it's like you're speaking to the exact same person every single time. You're not having to go through and repeat yourself constantly, time after time after time. So that's a little bit of the same thing that we were talking about, where it's like one person and then you only have to report to that one person. There's not a lot of communication within us, so it's like everything he tells me is in our business's brain. And going into the second point, using that to your advantage. I know Alex Hormozy talks a lot about that, where people will come up to him and be like, yeah, but you're at such a big advantage. You have all these locations, you have all these employees, you have all this experience. And then he's like, you got to look at it from the other side, because if I was in your shoes, it's like, you're just going to be, you say, you're not going to actually speak to Alex. You're going to be speaking to one of his reps that's following a script. Whereas you're speaking strictly to me the entire time. I got you. I'm here for you, and I can do everything for you. So there's two ways to look at it. You can either look at what you don't have, or you can look at what you do have.
Do you think that's why account executives are in so many different industries where, hey, this is my account manager, account executive, or whatever it is, and they deal strictly with that client, where there's the one-on-one communication. There's going to be no issues. Like, you don't have to talk to anybody else in the company. I'll take care of you. I'll handle any of the questions you have. Do you think that's kind of why that floats around?
Yeah, well, when you said account executive, I was like, I have no idea what that is. But like account managers, I think that's a big part of it. And the goal with that is relationship building, because with us in my business, or the 9 to 5 that I have, it used to be strategists would do everything. They would be the account manager, your relationship manager. There's so many different pieces in that one role, where you're supposed to be the strategist, where you come up with the strategy and all that. And a lot of the time there's a lot of churn. So we had this one client, they're still there. They've been with us for over 5 years, and they went through so many different strategists, and they got kind of annoyed with that. And they're like, it's a new strategist. We got to go through our company. We got to reiterate exactly like who we are, what we do. And then it's like, you have to constantly redo that. So having that one account manager, that's like that relationship, that binding piece to that specific client, it does help a lot. The main thing is you got to make sure that they don't leave your company, because they leave. They sometimes have 10, 20 different clients, and it's like all of a sudden you drop a
bomb on
new
all
guy.
of those clients.
Exactly. And then you got to replace them with someone. So as long as you retain that person, it does help a lot, because then you're dealing with that one main point of contact, and it just makes it a lot easier, where they know everything, they know the client, and they build that relationship.
Tyler and I don't have an experience hiring an account manager, but maybe that just goes to show that those account managers are important. So the better you can treat them, the better those relationships you have with the clients might be. Who knows?
Yep.
If that's solid advice,
Yep.
I don't know, because I've never hired one, but I assume that's what it would be.
Yeah. And then the last thing is, I know when we have our mastermind, a lot of the times we put down our goals, and it's like, this is what I'm going to do this week. And we don't look at that list until the next week. Yeah, exactly. So what I'm starting to do is actually like put that stuff in my task that I have to do every single day. So I actually did it this past weekend and finally did one that every single week I come to the mastermind. I'm like, nope, didn't do it. And so I actually put it in my task and I'm like, yeah, I actually got it done this week. So starting to do that a little bit more. So I'm not just coming once a week, seeing that list and it's like, fuck, I didn't do it again this week. So I'm trying to do that and trying to be better with adding the stuff in there, because I know a lot of the times I'm like not sure what to add in there, or maybe it's just like I'll add one thing in there and that one thing takes up like 3 hours and it's like I can't add other stuff because it's like I have this one. So it's like as long as I get to it and I like partially work on something. So I'm just trying to add stuff in there that, you know, keeps me on on track and make sure that I get stuff done.
I've run into that same problem quite a few times, and I started adding the tasks that are on the list to stuff that I think I'm going to be working on in the business anyways, not just coming up with new random shit, which is good. Which reminds me, the Ironman, when we film that in July, I'm going to have to add that as a contact card on VidLead. Otherwise, I'm going to forget to do those things. But yeah, I'll add that on there. Good to hear that you're making some changes to get stuff done, Tyler. I like to hear it.
Progress,
exactly. A few updates on my end. Apparently, Bennett Creative Media, we're now a live stream god. We can live stream whatever you want to do. We had a 4-day live stream this week. We live streamed
on Twitch.
Pretty much. We were actually live streaming on Vimeo. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's kind of cool because
did you get Vimeo, a lot of viewers?
The max we had is 125 at one point. But the nice part about Vimeo is you can set it up where the person has to pay to watch on there. So it's like a subscription service where you can live stream it. It's like, okay, you pay $20 and you get to live stream. So that's kind of the cool part of Vimeo. But yeah, we worked through Vimeo, live stream the Miss North Dakota pageant for 2024, and went pretty well. I was a little bit nervous in the beginning because I've never live streamed anything. But yeah, it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. The one thing about live streaming though, it's a lot like weddings. Whereas if you screw something up, you can't redo it. Like it's live, people are watching it right there. If you miss something in a wedding, you can't ask them to go back and redo the first kiss or whatever it might be. So something I had to get used to, especially operating the camera. If there's any slight jitters or any weird zooms or the framing was off, that's very visible on the live stream. So you have to be really smooth with your camera movements and really hone down on that. But I mean, it went well. It went really well. And I was joking with Matt. We got it figured out on Wednesday, the first day, and we were laughing. We're like, we can live stream. We're a live streaming company now, so it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Did you just use one camera, or did you have like multiple cameras and you like went through them like the high production, or I wouldn't say maybe like the actual TV film industry where it's like, all right, camera 7, all right, camera 3.
So that's a good transition to actually my next point on the updates. We had 2 cameras. One was a locked off wide that we could always punch to. In case the other camera was funky or a lot of people on stage. And then the other one was a tighter camera where we could kind of follow people on stage. But the next point I was going to talk about is that selling while you're working, selling the clients you're already working with, is a huge skill. And I really picked this up from Matt. I mean, he does this a lot when we're on shoots. He's still talking to the person, our contact point, and he's selling them on more videos, talk about what else they need. But during the live stream, yesterday, the last day, I was telling our contact point, I was like, hey, I think next year if we do this, if you guys want us to stream this next year, I think we should really go all out. We'll have 2 people up front on stage. We'll bring, we'll still have the 2 cameras up top, and we get a lot cooler angles. We can have some sliders down there, and we can really do, I'm like, you could picture it like, how they do in the NFL games where they cut to so many different cameras, and obviously that's live streamed. And she's like, that sounds awesome. She's like, if you guys just come up with the ideas, we'll just call you to do it. So always selling while you're working. That's something I'm trying to get better at, and always pitching ideas on the spot. I think it's a less stress-free, and it feels less like sales when you're doing it when you're already shooting a video. But if you're going in saying, I was thinking, on the shoot today, it'd be really cool if we did a video like this. That sounds less like a pitch than, hey, can we sit down for a meeting? I have some ideas to present. Where that definitely feels like a pitch meeting. So that's something I'm learning as I'm going.
Nice. Yeah. I feel like that's something similar to like what we're going to be talking about. Is it not?
Yeah. It's a fantastic transition. Before we get into this week's topic, though, last update, learning to be a boss, trying to do as best I can. Having an employee, there's a lot of learning curves I'm going through on the communication between the employee, expectations, different documents that kind of outline expectations. So that's been a good learning curve so far. I think it's been good so far. I was talking to Shayna actually yesterday, and we were talking about hiring a friend, because the person I hired, the editor Spencer, he is my friend. We were friends before he worked for me. And a lot of people say, well, don't hire your friend because then you can't make the hard decisions. But I got to the notion that maybe it's almost better that the first person I hired was my friend, because I'm learning how to treat people. I treat my friend as an employee differently than I'd maybe treat a stranger. With a stranger, I'd probably wouldn't treat him with as much empathy or as thoughtfulness. I'd probably just boss them around, and I'd probably have a shorter fuse for when they make mistakes. But I think hiring my friend first allowed me to realize maybe I'm tiptoeing the line a little bit because we are friends and I don't want to be a dick. But then I got to thinking, this is probably how I should treat everybody, whether they're my friend or not. So that's something I was thinking about recently.
How is being a boss? You liking it?
It's good. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a learning curve. You have to simmer down your expectations a little bit, whereas I've been editing for 5 years, so I can't expect him to be at the level I am. And sometimes when there are questions that you might think, well, this is a silly question, how do you not know that? You have to remember, okay, this person's new, they're just starting, they haven't been doing this. What seems like a silly question to me might not be a silly question to them. So it's been good, though. I enjoy it. I could see myself having a whole team and building out a team. I don't think being a boss would suck. But yeah, it's definitely challenging.
We'll get there. Have you come up with some core values for your company yet to make them aligned?
Yeah, not ones that I've written down. I work with a business coach every other week, and we just met last Monday, and he was talking about going through a VVP, which I think he said was a vision, values, and purpose. I think that's maybe what it stood for. There's like, I'll send you a document you can kind of fill out and start to think about that kind of stuff. And then you can make decisions and communications based on those values and those visions and propositions and purposes and everything that you want to tie to the actual employees that work at the company. So haven't written down like, hey, here's our core values. Obviously I have some in the back of my mind, like professionalism, trustworthiness, transparency, all that stuff, but nothing where I'm like, hey, these are the 5. This is what we go by.
Yeah, I think it helps in making decisions and actions and behaviors and everything like that. It's like, okay, you're not exemplifying trustworthiness or professionalism. You either got to fix that. This is going to be your one warning where I'm coming to you and letting you know this is what the area is, professionalism, and you're not displaying it. So either display professionalism or I'm going to have to let you go. So it actually gives you like a reason to have those tough conversations.
Something to lean back on, to be like, hey, this is the reason, like we both agreed upon. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned is that sometimes when you think about something, you're like, oh, I'm frustrated he didn't do that. Well, it's like, okay, did you both sit down and agree upon that? Maybe there's a situation where your employee, well, they didn't know or they didn't understand that that's how things were. Whereas the more conversations I can have where we can sit down and say, hey, here's what I expect. Do you agree on it? Do I agree on it? If we both agree on it, now this is something we can come back on. If 2 weeks down the road you're not doing it, I can say, hey, remember when we had that meeting, we both agreed that this is how it's going to be. Or we both agreed that X, Y, Z, whatever it is. So that's something that I've learned is that to have those conversations, don't make assumptions is probably the biggest thing. Whereas you might think, oh, well, why didn't you name the video that way? Right? Well, it's like, okay, did you ever tell them the exact format of how we name videos? Probably not. So you can't expect that. But if I create a document, I say, hey, here's how we're going to name every single project. It's going to be the client name, project name, and then version 1, version 2, version 3, whatever it is. Then you can look back and say, okay, why didn't you name it that way? We literally just went over this document. So that's one thing I've learned. Don't have too many expectations if you're not actually showing something that you're both agreed upon.
There you go.
So, but yeah, those are my updates. Obviously, I'll have to keep updating you guys as it goes along. Have an employee. It's definitely a change of pace, but I do like having somebody. I feel like it's freeing up a lot of my time already. It's not to the point where I can pass off a whole project, but I know it's freeing up multiple hours a week in just getting things sifted through and cut through and edited. So I do like that. But yeah, hopefully that keeps going. I know we were going to talk about at the end of the summer whether he stays or not. Right now I'm leaning towards, I'd love to have him stay. Again, it's going to be his decision. Do you want to quit your full-time job at school and work with me? Awesome. The other thing, sorry to keep rambling on this employee topic. We'll get into our topic here soon, but this is something I want to start implementing at the end of the week. I got to thinking about it as I was driving to Williston at like 4 o'clock on Friday. At the end of every week, I'm just going to ask Spencer and future employees, I'm just going to say, hey, what did you like this week? What did you hate this week? Is there anything that you have questions about? Is there anything I can help you with? This is your time. Like, get it out there. You don't have to be shy or anything or hide anything, but just having that conversation every week. And I think the more I do that, the more they'll start expecting that conversation to come at the end of the week, so they can start mentally preparing, saying, oh yeah, I know Easton in a couple hours is going to ask me how things were. I can tell him, I'm really struggling with the communication on projects, or I'm really struggling with this software, whatever it might be. So I think Spencer liked that. He said, I was struggling with communication a little bit, and I'm learning how to work on my own. He said, all of the other jobs that I've had, I've usually been around a lot of other people. So I'm learning that this job is a little bit of a grind by myself, where I'm just in my office with my headphones on, just going at it. And it helps learn about the person too, Right. I'm learning that, he's getting used to having to grind by himself all the time. So maybe there's a way that I can help ease him into that, where, I'll bring him into some of the meetings where he can get a break every couple hours or whatever that looks like. So just asking that question allows me to learn more about his experience actually working for the company. So
I like that. I think that's a good idea to implement that and get his inputs from there.
And he doesn't feel like a cast off, like I'm just pushing him into the waters. So I want him to feel like he's a part of the company and that he can have say a little bit. So
I like it.
All right, let's get into this week's topic. I have labeled it as Joe Rogan networking. Does this exist in the world? Probably not, because I like to say that I patented this phrase. I coined it. And I'll explain what Joe Rogan networking means a little bit. But basically, if you guys are listeners of the Joe Rogan podcast, you know that he is always asking questions. And if you turn the podcast off because you're like, I don't like Joe Rogan, I'm shutting this shit off, it doesn't matter if you like him or not. It's objective that he's always asking questions. He's always trying to pick people's brain, have them say whatever they're talking about. And I think that what he's really doing, whether he realizes it or not, is he's turning every single one of his podcasts into a mini discovery call. And I know we had an episode here, when was it, Tyler? 2-3 weeks ago on discovery calls. But turning these little conversations into discovery calls is huge into building relationships and potentially making sales. So obviously Joe's doing it on the podcast when he has guests on there. But I think if you start implementing this into your everyday conversations, that you're going to be much better in business, you're going to make more sales, and you're going to cultivate way better relationships. Tyler, what do you think about that? What do you think about the new patent that I'm going to submit to the U.S. government? Can
Questions
you patent a saying?
No, you can't. I think
a phrase, maybe.
I think it was copywriting. I forget what it was. I was listening to something about that and like, no, you can't do that. Or it was Hormozy talking about like creating ads, and it's like, can I copyright this or whatever it was? But
can you just do it with Nike? Is that copyright? It's got to be.
Yeah, I think that's different. But yeah, so I do agree, because questions are basically huge. Like that's what you want to be doing. If you want to be like a great conversationalist, you got to be able to ask good questions, and that's how you get more information. So I know Joe's not really doing it for business purposes, and he's just more so doing it for a conversation, get them talking, get them going, and he asks great questions, and he's really good at what he does, and that's why he's probably one of the highest paid podcasters there are. So I do agree that asking questions is great, because it uncovers so many different things that you can learn about that other person, what they're doing, what they're dealing with, any issues that they're having, and how you can help them. And it's like, oh, maybe they touched on something, and it's like, okay, let's touch on that. Let's dig a little bit deeper in there. And then you can start asking more questions, more probing questions into that area. And then it's like, okay, let's get more information here. And then that just gives you more ammo to see where they're at, what they're doing, how they're doing. So yeah, asking questions is honestly huge in conversations.
I think it comes back to being curious, You always want to be
Yeah.
curious, whether it's a stranger you've never met before and you just ran them into the grocery store, whether it's an acquaintance that you semi know, you don't see them all the time, but you'd say hello if you saw them in public, or whether it's your best friend or someone in your family. I think you should always be poking them on what they're doing. Have that mini discovery call about, oh, what are you working on lately, right? Oh, what are you trying to do? Oh, you just got a new job. Why did you get a new job? Ask as many good questions, like Tyler said, as you can, so you can potentially help that person. And the goal is not like, I need to ask them questions so I can help them. But I think just being a curious person will cultivate those better relationships, like you mentioned.
Yeah. What you just said there, because you like to it's not to just help them, and then you finished it, because I was like, I feel like it is to help them, but then you finished it and said to be like a better person, or like get more information, or I forget exactly what you said there. But at the same time, like asking those questions, you are able to better help them, because like maybe they are having some issues maybe like with video, and then it's like maybe they just got a camera and they're trying to figure it out. You're able to help them and guide them along, get them past that beginner stage, and be like, okay, this is what shutter is, this is what aperture is, this is what ISO is. So you're able to help guide them a little bit there. So I forget what the thing you just said, but yeah.
Well, yeah, and to clarify a little bit, of course, helping them's awesome. Like, don't discount that. But I don't think you should go into the conversation and be like, all right, I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions. I need to find a way to help this person, right? I think it's more so, exactly. It's more so to have the conversation, to be a good person, of course, and you want to care. Everybody loves when you have a conversation and it feels like the person you're having the conversation with actually cares about what you're talking about. Especially if you're in a weird niche or something super specific. Like if you're really into gardening and you have a conversation and you're talking about what you like about gardening and the types of plants you're putting in the ground, and the person on the other side of that conversation is really asking you a bunch of thoughtful questions and really feels like they're engaged, they might not know anything about gardening and they might not have any advice on what to plant or the seasons to plant. But if they feel like or if you feel like they care and they're asking you good questions, that makes you feel good. So I think if you can go into a conversation like that and just actually be curious about that person's journey and their life, maybe it runs into the point where they start talking about something that you can help them with. I'd say a majority of the time, usually the conversation does get to a point where you can help them with something based on your own experience. But don't go into the conversation thinking, all right, I need to ask questions so I can help this person. That's not the right way to do it.
Yeah, you definitely want to. I think it just becomes like, there's a book, I forget which book it is, but he basically says, I had a quote unquote conversation with someone, and they later said I was the best like conversationalist that they've ever had. And what he says at the end is like, I didn't talk the entire time. All I did was ask a couple questions and let that person talk.
And people love like talking about themselves.
Exactly. And like what they like to do, what they like, their passions, their interests, like that's what they want to be talking about. They like, I remember I have a buddy when, like way back in the day, he would always talk about like stuff that he enjoyed talking about, and no one ever wanted like to listen to it, because it was just like, that's what he would just talk about. He's like, hey, what about this? Hey, let's talk about this. And then he's just kind of like directing the conversation into something that he wants to be talking about. And it's like the most niche, boring stuff that no one wants to talk about. And it's like, yeah, sure thing. So you're just kind of like standing there like, And
the best part about the conversations when there are niche or not specific, like let's use gardening for example. I don't know anything about gardening, but the more conversations you have with these people and the more curious you can be, the more you're going to learn. The reason Joe Rogan knows a lot about everything is because he's curious. He's asking people questions about gardening. He's asking them questions about aliens. He's asking them questions about medicine. So even if you go into these conversations, if you see a family member you haven't seen in a couple years and they work in, the dentist industry, right? You can learn a lot about teeth. Maybe you learn something about that and that helps you in the future. So that's the nice part I like about different conversations, is that it isn't ever going to hurt you if you know more about specific situations.
Do you? This might be like contradicting what we're currently saying, because do you want to gain that knowledge or information in a specific industry, whatever it might be, and just kind of take up brain space from stuff that you might not care about or you'll never use or you'll never need.
But I think that I don't know if there's a world where you will never need that knowledge. I think it can always help you in some way or fashion or something or another. Because if I'm having a conversation with somebody that's really into gardening, right? And I might not sell them as a client. They might be talking about potatoes.
You sure you're not into gardening?
No, I'm not. I'm going to keep reiterating that. But they might be talking about this, or they might be talking about, oh, the best time to plant, potatoes is in the spring, or whatever that might be, right? I might not sell them as a client. I might not, whatever, because they don't have a business. But maybe down the road, you run into one of your clients that's also into gardening, and that helps you have a conversation with them. Or you can then give them a free piece of advice, or whatever that turns into. So I think as much knowledge as you can have is never a bad thing. I don't think you should worry about, well, I don't really need to learn about gardening because that's not going to help me in my video business, right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's good to listen, but it's like maybe it's like in one ear, out the other, just because like you're trying to pay attention to what they're currently saying and being there for them. And at the same time, I feel like you do still need to remember it just in case like you potentially do run into them again in the future. And it's like you can check back up on them and be like, hey, what's going on with here? How's the progress coming along?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, did you learn anything? Did you learn anything from the past gardening video that you watched, or like that past gardening course that you said you were taking, or whatever information that they might have told you? Like it can come back up in the future if you do end up running back into them.
Yeah, and you don't have to really remember the intricate details of what they're talking about, but even the way you just said that, maybe they take a gardening course, and maybe you learn that they are that they're like, oh my gosh, yes, so many different people have gardening courses. Like I just had a friend and they took a gardening course, and then I talked to another friend and they decided that they wanted to take this different gardening course. And then a third friend said, oh my gosh, yeah, you guys are taking those two, but this third gardening course, this is the best gardening course of them all. It's from this professional gardener, Jim Johnson, or whatever it might be. So you can then take that information down the road, and maybe you are a video creator like me and you realize, okay, well, I can create videos for a course, but you can then take it to, okay, I need to talk to some gardening companies, because these courses, apparently they're flying off the shelves. Every gardener is going to take a gardening course. So you might not care about the gardening at all. You're never going to take a gardening course, but there might be specific things that come up in conversation that maybe you can implement into your own business.
Yeah, that does make sense. And then you can see what learns from them, or what you learn from them, what works for them, different courses, different people, or what they found like helped them. And it might work for you or might not.
One specific example that I have on the notes here, I had a conversation with a guy. He's actually younger than me. He's about 3 years younger than me. And I used to work out with him in high school when we were both training for sports, and I knew him here and there. We weren't, we weren't super close friends, but we'd talk. You know, if I saw him out in public, I'd say hi to him, give him shit, whatever it is. And I saw him at the bar, and I had heard that he had started this new company, and he was creating cargo nets that you'd put in the back of your pickup for oil companies. Like, how niche of a product is that? And I'd heard through the grapevine the different numbers and the different revenue that he was making on this podcast, and it was a shitload of, or not on the podcast, but on this business, and it was a shitload of money. And I was like, holy shit, that's a lot. And I was like, I'm gonna have to, next time I see him, I'll have to ask him about it. And then I saw him at the bar. So I started having this conversation with him, and he's telling me all about the product, and he's telling me about, we only sell it to oil companies. I mean, you can buy it as a consumer, but our main target demo is oil companies. And I got to thinking, there are products out there that are so niche that it solves just one specific problem for big industries. So like this cargo net is literally solving one problem for oil companies, and that shit falling off their trucks. It probably doesn't happen a ton of times, but things falling off their trucks are probably super expensive, right? So just putting this one net over top, clamping it to the side of the truck, keeps it in place. And we started having this conversation. He talked about, I started this new company. I manufacture it myself. So that gave me the window to top in. And I was like, okay, well, what are you doing for marketing? And he was like, oh, well, the only things we're doing right now are trade shows. That's kind of our big moneymaker. And then started asking more questions. Okay, well, what do you want to accomplish? He's like, I want to work with big oil companies that place bulk orders. And that allowed me to chime in and be like, oh, have you heard of geofencing? Have you done any targeted ads? Have you ran any videos? So that one conversation about, what are you doing, and him explaining the product then leads into a marketing opportunity that I can potentially help him with. So that led into a meeting. We have a meeting when you're listening to this tomorrow morning. So just having those conversations, being curious, allows you to help out with free advice. I was giving him free advice on the spot, and that turned into him wanting to have a more extensive conversation about what he's doing. So that's just one example of being curious. Whoever you're having a conversation with, just ask them what they're doing. It might not lead to anything. You might just have a conversation that is very forgettable, but it might lead into something that's going to help you down the road.
You're really big on the geofencing right now, eh?
It's very specific in his situation, because he goes to trade shows, and he knows, he has like a list of the companies. He's like, these are the companies I'm targeting, right? He's like, I want to sell to this company, this company, this company. So that's when I chimed in. I was like, well, have you ever just targeted literally their building? Like just put a geofence around their building? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, sometimes, you can target like a city. I'm like, no, you can target their address if you want to. And he's like, how do you do that? And I was explaining it a little bit. So he's like, oh, that's crazy. So he's like, I could target XYZ oil company. And I'm like, if you want to create an ad that says, if you work at XYZ oil company and shit's falling off your truck, here's our cargo net, whatever that looks like. So he was super interested in that. But yeah, it just goes to show you, the more you know about their company. And I never would have known that he had these specific companies that he was targeting until I started asking more questions. If he had just been targeting the oil industry, I'd have been like, oh, okay, whatever. Create some generic videos. But when he's like, yeah, I want to sell to these are the 3 biggest companies. I want to get my product on their trucks. I'm like, dude, just start running ads towards their buildings and their companies, whatever it is. So
it's interesting. I want to ask you questions on that, but like it would be questions specific to him and his like target audience. So we won't go there.
Yeah. Well, you sure can if you want.
Would they be like in that specific building? Like what would that person be searching for? Like wouldn't they be they would need to be on their phone on Facebook just browsing, and then
I think the decision makers
trying to target. And then they're just going to see the ad, and then they're going to want to be like, hey, we need this type of deal?
Yeah.
Or, hey, we should get this?
I think they'd see it, and you'd have to position the creative, obviously, as like, oh, this is a problem we're having. And obviously that's his call. If he knows that this is a problem that the oil companies are having, and you call out that problem, I think any person scrolling through and, if the ad literally says, is shit keep flying off your trucks, or however you want to phrase it, they'd be like, yeah, actually that happens twice a week, right? We lose $3,000 worth of product a week, or whatever that looks like. Then you can say, okay, if this keeps happening, here's the solution. Here's our cargo net. You put it over your shit. It doesn't go anywhere. And then like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
We need that for every truck. We have 150 trucks in our fleet. Boom. You sell them for $500 a pop. Next thing you know, the $5,000 video you paid me to make just made you, on one sale, made you $150K or whatever it is,
Yeah. That's a smart business strategy on his part, targeting like these massive companies, and then they have all this massive fleet, and then they're potentially reoccurring buyers, and then it's just really, really smart approach on his end.
And that's where right now, like his main thing was trade shows. What I was telling him, I'm like, dude, you got trade shows. People literally have to go to these trade shows to see your product. I'm like, you should have an informational video that's all over the internet where anyone can see it. Like I shouldn't have to step foot at this trade show to be able to see your product. Like I should be able to see your product wherever. Like you should be marketing this, especially if this is the problem that you're solving. And oil companies have a shit ton of money. They're willing to invest in it. So yeah, the conversation turned out well, but that was just one example I wanted to give about, here are the things that you should be questioning when you go into conversations with people. See what they're doing. See what they're trying to accomplish. See what they're really having issues with. See a big win that they just ran into. Just ask as many questions as you can. And again, it's not always going to turn into anything, but if it does, then more power to you.
Yeah, and I think it makes you come off as a better person. That you.
Sorry. Oh, you're frozen. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yo, no problem. Yeah, it just makes you come off as a better person, where it makes it look like you have an interest in what they're doing, what they're pursuing, and then because you're asking the questions and you're being like a conversationalist, and then at the same time, if you're like digging deep enough into maybe some of their problems or issues, then and you're able to like help them out, then it just like, even if it's just free advice, then it just like puts you kind of, gets your foot in the door, and then they might end up referring you, or they might end up coming to you later. It's like, hey, really like this idea. We should talk a little bit more about that. Or maybe they know what you do, and then someone in the future comes up to them and it's like, yeah, I'm kind of looking for a video guy, and you had a really good conversation with him where you were asking questions, you were helping him out, you seemed really knowledgeable, you got your business, it looks good, and then all of a sudden you got a referral there.
Yeah, exactly, and I 100% agree. It's just going in again, like we've said, you just got to be curious, especially if you really get that high on like, oh, I want to give people free advice. Yeah. Take whatever conversation you have. We'll go back to gardening because that's been a theme of the show. But if someone's like, yeah, God, I can't figure out why my tomatoes keep coming out so small. Like every time I plant tomatoes, every year they come out just so small. And if you can go back the next day and you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to look into this for 15 minutes, see why tomatoes are being an issue. And you figure it out and you shoot them a text or whatever it is and say, hey, I know last night we were talking about those tomatoes. I actually figured out that the tomatoes, they don't grow when you use this kind of soil or whatever it is. That's going to make you
seem to know
so
a lot about
valuable.
gardening.
I don't know shit about gardening. But I know that it does require soil and other plants.
Water.
Water too. Yeah. You text them and you're like, hey, have you tried watering the plants?
Shit.
Just ran into that. Like I was just looking it up a little bit. But yeah, it's good being able to give that free advice. Again, go into the conversations knowing I'm not going to ask for anything. I don't want anything in return. I want to try to help you out as much as possible. If it turns into this big thing where I can help them with geofencing and then we can sell some videos, awesome. But it's something you shouldn't be like, I need to go into this conversation, be like, I need to sell this person for $10,000.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think we talked about this in an episode a while ago. Don't talk as much because like people don't really give a shit about like. I mean,
they care about themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you don't want to overwhelm them or like just kind of talk about yourself, brag about yourself or whatever. You don't learn anything. And at the same time, they probably don't really care as much, especially if they're not asking questions and they're just coming back with the, wild. They're like, that's crazy, bro, or something like that.
And people will fill the silence too. If you ask a question and you don't talk a ton, they'll start to fill the silence. They'll spew information left and right.
Yeah, people don't like silence.
Exactly.
I don't get why.
So yeah, go into those conversations with some curiosity, see what you can do to help, and you'll start to build some better business, or you start to build some better relationships, and maybe build your business in the process. Tyler, anything else you want to add there?
I believe that's it.
All right, so this week's business idea, I know we skipped it last week, but we do have one this week, and it is called Roll Pull. ROLL space PULL. And you're going to love this one, Tyler, but I'm sitting on the pot yesterday taking a deuce, and my toilet is next to the wall, but my toilet paper roll is like on my back right hip. So it's not really even with me. It's kind of like behind me a little bit. So every time I need toilet paper to wipe, I got to turn and twist and torque my whole body over to the right to get toilet paper and then turn back, right? So I was like, God damn, this is an issue. Every single time I do this, I notice I got to turn and it's fucking annoying. Where it'd be awesome if you could have the toilet paper holder that's attached to my vanity. If you could just grab it and then it kind of pulls out, that's even with like your knee. And then you pull the toilet paper off and then you could slide it back so you don't have to twist and turn. So super simple invention, but I think, man, I would buy one tomorrow if this existed.
So explain it again where it's like on the wall and...
So you've been in my upstairs bathroom, right? So for the people listening, I'll try to give you a visual. All right.
I don't think I took a deuce up there though.
Yeah, probably not. So you are in if you're looking from top down, let's give the people a visual here. You're looking from a top down room, right? It's a 10 by 10 room, so a perfect square. In the bottom left corner is the toilet. Okay. On the bottom right corner is a one sink vanity. Okay. So just to the right of where the toilet's at. Attached to the toilet side of the vanity is the mounted toilet paper roll on the side of the vanity. You picturing this, Tyler?
Got it.
So when you're sitting on the toilet, your knees are probably about the halfway line of the room. So you picture where your knees are at?
Yep.
And the toilet paper roll is probably about the 1/8 line of the room. So it's almost like where the back of the toilet's at. It's even with the back of the toilet, the tank.
Not
So
ideal.
so if your knees are in the middle of the room, you have to turn your whole body to get to the 1/8 side, almost close to that bottom wall. If you're looking down that bottom 10-foot wall, and then it's like you got to twist and pull it. So I think if you could just reach back, pull it out, pull some off, push it back in, then Bob's your uncle, man.
So it's like an extension. So it's like one of the.
Pretty
Pull it
much, yeah.
out.
I see it on almost like a rail. Like, you know how a drawer, when you pull a drawer out, it's on a rail? Almost like that,
Yeah.
but a toilet paper roll.
Interesting. Then it kind of like gets stored away, and then it's like not there, not visible. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Those extendable ones. So it's like 3 stacked on top of each other, and then the second one pulls out, and then when that one's pulled out, the third one pulls out, and then it pushes back in. That's kind of
like
what I'm visualizing.
Like vending machines.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting.
So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Very niche
Could
problem.
just have not poor design, but yeah. Or maybe you just go to some spec built home builders, like some of the biggest home builders in the country, and say, "This is our product. Put it in all of your houses," and then it's like an easy win there. You know.
Yeah, that's a good idea actually. If you can get in a bunch of houses.
I'm just going back to the oil company, and then like him going to those oil companies and then just reverse engineering it. Okay, now we're going to home builders, and we're gonna be like, hey, I got this product that's gonna revolutionize the bathroom.
Because I think if you started it in like let's say you started it in Minnesota or something, if more and more people were touring houses and they're like, okay, we're trying to buy a house, and they keep seeing these things in the bathroom, they're like, what are these new toilet paper rolls? We've never seen these before. Yeah. And the people could be like, oh yeah, it's roll pull. It's out of these guys out of North Dakota.
And then they start buying them.
Yeah,
for
and
their
then
home.
it's like, oh cool, I'm gonna get one of those. And then you can get them. You just talk to a spec builder in like every big city. You're gonna go to Minneapolis, get a bunch of them in there. You go to Chicago, get a bunch of them in there. You go to LA, get a bunch of them in there. Whatever it is, and it's like, oh, these are popping up over all the cities. You give them a little discount. You say, you guys got to buy the toilet paper roll holder anyways, so we'll just give them to you at a discounted rate. And then once you have national recognition, that's when you sell them at full price.
And then you're able to go D2C when people see it.
Exactly. I like that.
I like it.
Not saying it's a fantastic idea, but it solves a pretty niche problem that I'm currently having. Yes. So
maybe you'll get it for your own house. Maybe
I just might make one.
Patent it.
Just one. Like, where can I buy one of these?
I'm like,
you can't, bitch. This is the only one. And I take it with me wherever I go. I install it in hotels and then I disinstall it when I leave. It's awesome. All right, Tyler, anything you want to tell the people before we get out of here?
No, I believe that's everything.
Awesome. All right, guys, that's episode 92. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. 92 episodes with all of you lovely people. We can't thank you enough for tuning into every one of them. If you guys have any questions on your specific business journey, Tyler and I would love to answer those. Feel free to email us at themidnightentrepreneur@gmail.com. And if you have no questions, we will see you next week. That is episode 92 of The Midnight Entrepreneur. Tyler, get us out of here.
You can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. Zig Ziglar.